Good afternoon, everyone. As you're entering in, we will get started here briefly. I'll go over our Lyceum guidelines and expectation, and then I'll hand it over to my colleague, Sarah. So I'll give everybody a few minutes to kind of get in and get settled. All right. So my name is Kia McElvin. I'm the Lyceum Director here at Wingate University, and we have the opportunity to talk about salary negotiation today. So before we begin, I want to go over our Lyceum guidelines and expectations. So for my students entering into the chat, please be reminded to keep your electronic devices charged or charging throughout this duration of the presentation. If you lose connection or your device dies on you, you don't get the assessment quiz, you will not receive credit for this Lyceum. I ask that you show your utmost respect to our panelists as well as your peers as you all are attending this presentation. And lastly, I ask that you are immersive and reflective during this presentation. If you have any questions, you can drop that in the Q&A box and we'll try to get to as many questions as possible with the length of our presentation. So without further ado, I'll hand it over to Sarah.
Welcome, everyone. We're excited for this panel. My name is Sarah Colon. I'm the new Director of Alumni Engagement here at Wingate University, which means that we will be doing many more events and panels like this. And so we're really excited to partner with Career Services and Lyceum on this. This is the first of many future series, we hope, on career. And I want to go ahead and turn it over to Liz, and then we'll go ahead and introduce our panelists.
Hey, everybody. So glad that you're here today to join us. I am Liz Biggerstaff. I'm the Assistant Vice President for Career Services here at Wingate. Our primary focus in career services is obviously to offer support to our undergraduate students in their career exploration as well as preparation. We hope that in the future we'll be able to offer some of that same day-to-day support to our alumni. Until then, we are so excited to be able to have the opportunity to partner with our Office of Alumni Engagement to offer our resources and our expertise and our contacts as well to help support our alumni in their career exploration, their career preparation, and just the pursuit of some of your goals in your career. So happy to be here and hope that you guys enjoy today's panel.
Great. I'll go ahead and get started. So I'm Dr. Terese J. Lund. I will serve as moderator for this panel discussion, and I'm so thrilled to be here with our amazing 4 panels that we've assembled for this event. As a bit of context, I am an associate professor of psychology here at Wingate. I also serve as director of undergraduate research and chair of women and gender studies. And because of my work in women and gender studies, I've been researching and providing educational workshops on salary negotiation through the American Association of University Women. Despite work at organizational levels as well as individual levels, wage inequity and salary negotiation remain pressing issues for job seekers and employees. A recent study showed that 60% of recent college graduates didn't negotiate their salary, even though 84% of employers said they had room to bump their original offer. In short, what we see is that job seekers are leaving money on the table. And this is especially true for women and women of color. And this continues to perpetuate a very stubborn wage gap we see. This panel will provide diverse perspectives on salary negotiation, dispel any misconceptions we have about negotiating a salary offer, and provide helpful tips for a successful negotiation. I'm going to allow each panelist to introduce themselves in a few minutes, share their connection to the topic and to Wingate University more generally. And I'll start with the first person I see on my screen. Vivian, would you unmute and share a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Vivian Marin. I am actually an international student that came to Wingate from Germany. I graduated with a bachelor's degree in marketing in 2016. And I am currently a recruiter that works for an agency, which means that companies come to me to help them find different talent. So I work across multiple different industries and professions.
Thank you, Vivian. Tanisha, would you please unmute?
Sure. Tanisha Bomani. I am an employee here at Wingate University as the HR director. I've been in human resources probably about a little over 23 years, 26 years of management. I started in management right after graduating from my undergrad, which was Michigan State University. So, but my connection is one as an employee, but also I got my MBA here as well in December 2022.
Thank you, Tanisha. Kevin.
All right. Hi, everybody. My name is Kevin Logan. I'm class of 2015, and I now work at a company called Avid Exchange. So it's a public company headquartered in Charlotte. So we're a fintech company, financial technology, and we do accounts payable processing, which is basically means we are like Venmo for businesses. And I am our senior manager of employer brand at Avid Exchange. So I deal with what it's like to work at our company. And previously I was in HR communications at Atrium Health.
Thanks, Kevin. And last but not least, Paula.
Yeah, hi everyone. Yes, I'm the elder here. I graduated in 1995, played basketball at Wingate back in the day. Part of the HR realm for almost 18 years. And I'm supporting, I'm an HR business partner at GKN Automotive. We are out of London, and the plant that I support, there's two of them side by side pretty much. I'm in Newton, North Carolina, and I do all the hourly and salary hiring, as well as a lot of other tasks and surveys and things like that. So that's kind of it in a nutshell.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Paul. And thank you everyone for introducing themselves. We have a number of topics we want to get through as a panel, although we hope to have a wide-ranging, informative, and exciting conversation. To get us kick-started, I will introduce a topic and ask one of my panelists to share their perspective, and then we'll kind of have a free-flowing conversation from there. Again, as Kia noted at the beginning, there is a Q&A function. So if there are any questions that come up throughout, things that maybe are unclear that you want addressed later, please drop those thoughts and questions in the chat, and then hopefully we'll be able to get to those at some point during our discussion. But again, we're having this Lyceum event because there's a lot of mystery that kind of shrouds salary negotiation. And we think it's really important that we educate and share the knowledge that our panel has so that we can be more open about this process and learn to get what we're worth when we're negotiating a salary. So I'd like to get us started with a discussion of any myths or misconceptions that you think exist with regard to salary negotiation. I believe that knowledge is power. And so once we understand what actually is real and fact and reality, we can move from there to better equip ourselves for a successful offer and negotiation. So let's start to bust some myths and dispel some misconceptions. I'd like maybe, Kevin, if you're ready to jump on in, what are some misconceptions or myths you think exist about salary negotiation or job offer negotiations?
Yeah. So first of all, thank you for having this discussion in general, because salary negotiation is something that's not really taught in school. I mean, it's not standard practice. And so the very fact that Wingate is hosting this Lyceum is really powerful, because it will impact, all the attendees who can learn some information from people who've been there before. So I think the questions about myths, I think at a very basic level, there's this sort of myth that like when a company offers you a job, you should just take it no matter what the salary is. And I think this myth is especially prevalent for, first time job havers, if you will. So recent graduates, they get a job offer and they're just thankful to have an offer, and so they accept it. But there's almost always room to negotiate. And if you accept it right off the bat, you're going to leave money on the table, like you were talking about before. So I think I would just, state the obvious there, that you should negotiate. It is a myth that you must accept an offer, even if you are straight out of college.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. I think that's really helpful just in kind of setting the table that there is this expectation almost that you will negotiate, and that it's so important just to take a beat and not jump at that job offer. We're so trained that we get excited, the job offer's there, we feel like we are compelled to take it. But an important part of the process is actually stepping back and negotiating your salary before you formally accept. Other panelists, any misconceptions beyond the kind of important one of the importance of negotiating?
I would add, look at it in terms of total compensation. So if you have two offers of, let's say, 50,000, take a look at the different benefits that each company has. So for example, we have some clients that pay 100% of the cost that typically falls on employees for health, vision, and dental. That can save you like $200 to $300, depending on the benefits that you're getting per paycheck. So even though sometimes you might get a higher salary offer here, some of the hidden costs, so to speak, of like healthcare and things like that can affect what you actually take home. So look at it in terms of total compensation, and that includes any annual bonuses, maybe sign-on bonuses. Some companies also offer student loan assistance. So salary is not the only thing that you can negotiate. This also goes with maybe instead of being fully in the office to maybe after an onboarding period where you've kind of proven yourself, after like 3 to 6 months, maybe a year, that maybe you can start working from home. This is where you save gas money, car maintenance costs. Other things are, I know that some clients offer company cars as well as a gas card. If it's another company that is a little bit more in the middle of nowhere, they have vending machines and they offer like a $50 credit for the vending machines every month that you can kind of use. So then you don't have to really worry about snacks. That's a little tiny little perk, but those little side things can then end up affecting what you take home in terms of pay. And ultimately, that's what really matters.
Yeah, I think that's so important. The total package. Again, often we focus so much and so narrowly on the specific number that we're offered, but you bring up so importantly the value of benefits, and that benefits are like money. When you add up the cost in terms of insurance and other things, maybe gas for telecommuting, other benefits in terms of PTO, flex, work situations. And so I think that that's really helpful, that potentially we're too narrow when we think about when we're negotiating. It's not just the dollar figure at the end, it's all of these other things.
I was going to add to that, you can always think about vacation too, like at this time and day since COVID, it has changed where a lot of companies are trying to keep employees happy, even if you're a current employee or a potential employee. Where we have went is it was standard pretty much everywhere, 2 weeks vacation. And now we're giving 3 weeks. So, and that's really nice out of the gate as being a new, first job. I was going to also say, I was going to dip into internships too. It's hard to find a mute point on that for salary negotiations. That's kind of laid out typically an hourly rate depending on what year you are when you're going to graduate, and review a lot of the sites for internships, because I've been working on a lot of that right now, preparing for graduates to get out around May 8th. So we hire a lot of those, but look at the career sites for that, and try to go after that vacation as well, and a sign-on bonus like she had mentioned. That's key nowadays too. So.
In regards to myths, I think about just as a new grad, not having experience. So that's a myth. What can you say in that interview that may allude to the experience that you need? Did you play basketball while you were in college? Are you part of a team? Are you a team? You know, you're good to work in a team environment. Have you done, what do you call it? Just working for community service, just go out there. So there are things that we forget about. We're thinking, oh, I'm looking at this accounting job and I don't have, only thing I've done is take accounting classes. No, you've done more. And you just kind of got to reach and do your homework and figure out, you know, what that is and kind of rehearse on your own. So that's my addition for that. My other thing is that you are worthy of that higher salary. So a myth is students that, or anyone that feels that they're not worthy of that. We tend to tell ourselves why we can't have that higher salary or that job. So make sure that you're positive, you're going in and marketing yourself. So you've got to believe in yourself to do that. So believe that you can get that.
I think that's really helpful, Tanisha. This idea of not only are we looking holistically at a package, thinking about salary, benefits, vacation, I think as Paula noted, and I think it's also helpful that when we look holistically, we are looking at kind of where we are at various points of our trajectory. So internships, that requires a different level of research and concern in terms of evaluating an offer versus a new grad versus someone who's been on the market for a while or is trying to renegotiate within their position. And so there's a holistic evaluation that has to take place at each level, but then also within oneself, so that we're not selling ourselves short, that we're really understanding all of the characteristics that we bring to the table. And so I think we went through some of the most important myths out there. I think one that really plagues people, especially potentially women, and there's some research to support this, is that companies will be offended if you negotiate, that you are being aggressive or too direct. Do folks have any idea or any thoughts about that myth? Do you think companies are offended when you negotiate? What can folks maybe do to overcome that kind of hesitancy?
So I'll take a first stab at it and then pass to the rest of the panel. So short answer is no, I don't think companies would get offended if you negotiate. I would actually, have a take that they might go the other way. They might be impressed that you are able to negotiate. It's a good business skill. And so companies want people in their ranks who can negotiate, whether it's for themselves or for cheaper pricing on something that they do after they're hired. There's lots of ways that negotiation enters the business world. And so if you can start this conversation with an employer from a place of power where you are saying, hey, I bring X value to your company, and I think it's reflective of X salary, then it shows that your worth, which is a valuable skill, and you're not afraid to communicate that through that negotiation. And companies want people who can do those things.
Absolutely, Kevin. Vivian, did you want to add on to that?
Yeah, so keep in mind that the job is open and available for a reason. The company has a need. Just as much as you need a job and you need to get paid, the company needs to fill this position. If it wasn't open, it wouldn't have been a critical position to begin with, and they would have just held off, because company typically like to save money. They don't just want to hire people and put people on payroll just to waste money. And so kind of keep that in mind. And typically I have not really seen employers to be outraged by salary negotiations. So typically early on, they ask what is it that you're targeting? And if what you're targeting is beyond what they actually have in the budget, what they can afford, they will tell you this up front. So by the time that you actually get to the interview negotiation part, they already know that you're within their budget. And throughout the interview process, you want to make sure that you are presenting yourself as something that you can contribute to them as a company. So it really helps when you also interview the company and ask questions like, why is this position open? What skills are missing from the team? And kind of pay attention and listen so that you can chime in and say, hey, I heard that you guys are missing this particular experience with this software, something like that. I have incredible experience with that. I know what I'm doing with this. And this is where you're kind of adding like the cherry on top, so that by the time that you ask for the outrageous salary, they won't feel like it's outrageous. You have presented yourself with the value, and it's kind of like nobody is outrageous at the price tag of a Lamborghini. Everybody just understands it. And so if you kind of market yourself as a Lamborghini or like a fancy BMW, then they won't be surprised and they won't be outraged at it. And as the saying goes, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
Right. Absolutely. And so I think Kevin and Vivian, I think you so well put this idea that negotiating is also another arena for us to demonstrate our skills that they're going to hire us for, our ability to communicate effectively, our ability to be persuasive. And so that negotiating opportunity is another way to demonstrate why we might be a good hire and an effective fit in an organization. So I think by now, most of the folks in the audience now realize, okay, it is important to negotiate one's salary and that this is expected in most cases and it's not going to offend anyone. And so let's imagine that we're ready to go. We are going to negotiate an offer. What are some tips that we might give to new hires, maybe recent college grads, that they should be mindful of when negotiating? So we've heard a little bit about understanding your value and being able to articulate your value. I think Tanisha had a great point about taking a holistic look at what you bring to the table and not selling yourself short. What are some other tips or things that new hires should be cognizant of, strategies that they should implement before going into a negotiation and in that crucial moment when they're having a discussion with a prospective employer?
Yeah, I'll take this one to start off with. I would say, if depending on the job that you're going for, the career path that you're going for, say engineering, I do hire a lot of engineers. If you have any sample work from college to present, send that into the hiring manager to show that too. And that could be a discussion in your interview too, to show your strengths. Also, like references, if you have strong references, and really build out your LinkedIn page. I lean heavily on LinkedIn, and I can tell who has a good page and who doesn't. I even pay someone to update mine frequently. And touch on a resume. It's worth spending some money to get a professional to do your resume, especially out of the gate, because all I see is a piece of paper, and you just need to spell out everything that you've done on there, and have your references ready too, and let them type on your, do a recommendation on your LinkedIn page as well. Mm-hmm.
Paula, I love all those suggestions. I think it's so important how you highlighted all the prep work that goes into it, right? Mm-hmm. So making sure that that resume is polished, making sure your LinkedIn page is updated and is thorough and comprehensive, having references ready to go. I think often we don't think so much about all of the prep pieces that go into those moments when we're negotiating, when we're seeking a job, but all of that with polish is critical to getting your foot in the door and getting yourself at the negotiating table. So I appreciate that discussion. And I would say for students who are on the call, our career services office offers a lot of help in those areas. And so I would seek them out, as well as other services potentially if you are an alum and are no longer a student here, but utilize the help that is available, especially for our current students seeking out career services. So we've talked a lot about kind of the prep. What are some other pieces, other tips that individuals need to be cognizant of going into that negotiation?
I'm gonna jump in here. Really do your homework. Who are you working for? Who are you interviewing with? And I'm coming from a point of being in government for 16 years. A lot of it's already, the salaries are already structured. So if you're in what they consider a classified position, that range is what it is. You may be able to move up that range based on your experience. Generally, I know in Baltimore City government, it would, if someone asked for more money, I would have to prove to the mayor's office that their the additional money was based on whatever experience. Some companies only look at post-grad experience as experience in government. So just be careful who you, or know who you're interviewing with. In addition to nonprofits, sometimes when they're doing those grants, they have specific amounts that they have the grant for. So it's kind of boxed in a little more than if you're going to a private or a corporation. But with that, even with a corporation, you want to look at financial statements. I just heard on the news, Bed Bath & Beyond is liquidating. They're getting ready to go out of business. So if they're hiring, they shouldn't be, but are you going to actually get that increase? Is that a company you want to be with if they're not going to be around? So it's imperative that you really look at, if you really want to work for that company, that you're looking at more than just the job description. You're looking at the website, you're looking at their financial statements, their annual financial statements. So, and that job, the job description, to see what it is that that job has on it. So that it may be incorrect. It may say HR generalist and it should be HR or HR assistant and it should be HR generalist. You know, what do the duties say that show that, you know, that job should perhaps be more than what they're saying?
I think those are all excellent points, Tanisha. I think, again, what we're starting to see as a theme and kind of tips is research, right? We need to prepare ourselves. We need to prepare our materials so that we can present an effective case, so that we have the, you know, package, the materials that get through the door into an interview or into a negotiation. But we need to do a lot of research as well to know who we're interviewing with. We need to do research potentially on the salary ranges that exist for a particular position. We have to be armed with information about the particular company. Vivian or Kevin, did you want to jump in on some tips?
Yeah, I think it's obviously a very important theme to prepare. So just to add on to what some of the other panelists were speaking about, another way you can prepare and research is on a site like Glassdoor. So Glassdoor has really useful information, not only about what it's like to work at a company, but they're starting to add more and more information about salary range itself. And so Glassdoor has this algorithm that they use to try to determine salary ranges for specific job titles. Part of that data comes from actual reviews. So if you say, you know, I'm a project manager for Bank of America, you know, you can go on Glassdoor, leave your review of the company, but also input your salary range. And Glassdoor will take an aggregate of data from, you know, lots of people who've left those reviews and then start to build what ends up being a fairly accurate range for that type of position. And that information is just available for anyone who goes and seeks it out. So definitely use Glassdoor as a resource. Know that it may not be 100% accurate, but least has more info than you might have currently. And then use that same platform to understand what it's like to work at the company. They have reviews on everything from benefits to culture to diversity and inclusion, like lots of different categories that people can leave reviews in. And it's a great way to get an inside look. And then one more tip, just in this theme of research and preparation. So the LinkedIn profile, Paula touched on it earlier, but your LinkedIn profile is, I can't state enough how important it is that it looks good. It has a good description of your skills, your experience, because that is the first place that a recruiter or a hiring manager will go to kind of check you out. It should be, an advertisement for you as an employee. And it should list the things that you have experience in, the things that you have competencies in. And it's just really a valuable tool. And you can also use LinkedIn to get that inside view. So, to the Wingate students on the call, you have a huge network of people, and that is graduates of Wingate University. So several of us on this panel, plus thousands more that are out on LinkedIn, and you can search for people who work at a specific company who went to your specific university, and LinkedIn, lets you tap into those folks. You can ask them what it's like to work there, and maybe even ask for a reference, a recommendation, because I think anyone close to recruiting at pretty much any company would tell you that an internal recommendation lands a candidate on the top of the pile. So it can be a really valuable thing to get your name passed along internally.
Thanks, Kevin. I do think, the importance of research cannot be underscored in preparation, getting that LinkedIn profile, that advertisement of selling yourself, polished and perfected, and then again doing your due diligence on glassdoor.com, trying to figure out what's an appropriate range that I should be in, because a lot of folks maybe are not even cognizant of what an appropriate range would be for a specific position in a specific geographic location. And so doing that due diligence is so important. Vivian, did you want to jump in here?
Yeah, so in terms of research, I would also recommend do some research on cost of living. Coming out of college, you're going to have to get an apartment. That means you need to research all the different kinds of apartments that are where you want to live. Then to qualify for that apartment, you need to make 3 times as much on a monthly basis. What does that look like financially? So even just kind of getting the numbers figured out to see, okay, I need to make X amount of money just to even be able to afford housing. All of these things matter, and this will kind of give you a solid breakdown so that when you do go into negotiations, you will feel a lot more comfortable, because there is a non-negotiable part of your salary, and what you need to be able to actually afford. And ultimately, the reason why we go to work is to pay for our existence. So if you can't get a job that pays and covers the basic cost of living, then there's really no point. So make sure that you really list out everything and sum it up to kind of figure out what is it that you need to make, where can you kind of have some wiggle room with salary, maybe to start out, live with a couple of roommates to kind of save on the housing costs, because housing is pretty expensive in Charlotte right now. And also do some research on once you have figured out what that number is that you're targeting on an annual basis, what jobs in your field actually pay that much, how much experience do you have? Then also research what the compensation ranges are for each company, because just because there is a national average, that doesn't necessarily mean that a particular company that you're targeting is able to actually afford that. So smaller banks may not be able to afford a big salary the way that, let's say, Bank of America or Wells Fargo would be able to. So do that research up front so that you don't find yourself in a position where you're negotiating. You've gone through the effort of interviewing, you got your hopes up, because it is a very emotional process for it to then all fall apart due to lack of research up front. So it is very time extensive and time consuming to kind of do that research up front. But the more research you've done up front, the more confident you will feel that by the time that you get to negotiations, it'll be very easy. You won't be as nervous. It won't be as nerve-wracking. You'll just be ready to go, and you will know your non-negotiables, and you won't find yourself in a position where you're working and you can't afford to live.
That's such
I
an
wanted to add
important.
one more.
Go ahead, Paula.
Good. Also, to her note, reference salary.com. I mean, I have tools that we pay to be a part of to look at salary ranges all the time. But salary.com is really good as a reference point too for candidates to go and look at in the industry.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent resource as well. I just wanted to bridge Vivian's point that I think is so well articulated, this idea of when you're doing your homework, you're also doing homework on yourself. So what is cost of living? What is budget? Do I have student loans I have to pay back? Where am I living? And so helping figuring out what you need to live, creating that budget is really important in creating kind of a walk away salary. So what's kind of the lowest number that you can accept to be able to live? And so that walk away number, and this is a strategy that's developed by American Association of University Women, AAUW. They say it's very important to have that walk away number because then it prevents you from accepting less than you would be able to live upon. And so you really need to do your homework about what do you actually need to live and realistically consider that within the jobs that you're applying for. So doing the research on salary.com, doing the research on Glassdoor. And so you have this walkaway point, you have a salary range you're targeting. Often folks recommend that you take that salary range and take that target salary and spin it upward 5 or 10%. And you have a range that you bring to the table to negotiate. So we've done all of our homework. We've researched, we've polished that LinkedIn page. We've got ourselves in the door. We've got ourselves at the table and we're negotiating an offer. What are some strategies or tips that you think potential hires should be cognizant of in the moment when they are articulating their value, when they're trying to be persuasive? What are some things that you would recommend that you see are more likely to lead to a successful negotiation?
Confidence. When you go in there, be confident because I think we can smell fear. So make sure that you're confident in what you're saying and you're able to articulate your value well. And you have all your data together when you're speaking. If you're talking about your past experiences, you're able to communicate all of those things very well to that hiring manager.
I was going to add to that too. I always ask, how do you need to dress? Because different environments are different ways. Like a lot of times I'm telling people here, be casual. You can be casual like a golf shirt. You don't have to wear a suit, but I'm asking them to be able to go into our plant. We have to have a safety glasses given to them, a vest, and steel-toed shoes. So I'm having to tell that to everybody. But yeah, just be forward in asking that kind of question and don't be afraid because like most larger corporations, we have a range. So we're given from each year to year, low, mid, and high salary range. So there is money there, but you've got to be confident. But ask that question up front in the interview. That's like the white elephant that people don't do most of the time. But do that up front because you need to know if that's something that you want. You need to evaluate them and interview them as much as they're interviewing you.
Yeah, absolutely, Paula. Kevin, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, Paula, I think that's great guidance to ask about the salary up front. I would recommend doing that. Well, let me take a step back. So typically a hiring process has a few different steps, right? So the recruiter starts the process and they look at all of the applications for that job. They may even look at people who did not apply to the job. So that would be like a passive applicant, because some of the, the best people for the job may already be employed and not actively looking. Anyway, so they will get a list of all the applicants. They'll narrow it down to a short list, and then they will reach out to those applicants and do what's called a recruiter phone screen. And Vivian, you are probably an expert on this. So I'll just give the overview. But they'll do a phone screen, and that is where they are vetting you to see if you
Kevin, I think you froze on my end. Is Kevin okay? While Kevin is sharing about Vivian, do you want to jump in and share a little bit about? Oh, Kevin, you're back.
Hey,
Go ahead,
sorry,
Kevin.
I froze right in the middle of talking. But yes, on that phone screen is a great time to ask about the salary range. I would recommend asking the recruiter about that rather than the hiring manager, just because it's a little more tactical, and the hiring manager is the one who will decide if you're a good fit for the team and your experience, but the recruiter can help with questions about salary, benefits, that kind of thing. So yes, I would definitely ask about the range up front. And then when you get to the point where you're ready to negotiate, remember that you're probably going to end up somewhere in the middle. So if they offer you $40,000 as the offer, but you want to be at 45, if you say, okay, what about 45? They're probably not going to come all the way up to where you were. They might meet you in the middle at 42,500. But if you say, well, what about 50,000? Then they might meet you in the middle at 45, which is what you actually want. So it's a little bit of a game, honestly. And you have to know the rules of how to play that game in order to get where you want to be.
Vivian, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, so typically during those screening calls for active applicants that have directly applied to the role, I ask them, what is it that you're looking for in terms of total compensation? If it falls within the range, I say, perfect. The range for this particular role is, let's say they want to be at 80,000, and the salary range that I've been given is between 70 and 90. I let them know that it's between 70 and 90. If I am looking for passive candidates and I'm reaching out to them, I typically already include the salary range in my outreach message, because ultimately everybody has bills to pay, and not everybody has different reasons for the minimum that they need to have. And for a job switch to even take place, especially for someone who's not actively looking, obviously there needs to be some kind of incentive, and typically that's a monetary incentive. So I typically include that in there. And if they say, no, I currently make more, I always try and ask, what is it that you would need to consider making a switch? Because that way I can kind of tally up the numbers and say, hey, I reached out to 100 candidates. 15 of them said they would be open to making a switch. This role sounds really good, but they're out of your compensation range. This is what they're looking for. And so giving that feedback to the recruiter that you're talking to, that way they can pass it on. And eventually the company might be able to find some more money in between the couch cushions, so to speak. And they might be able to get back to you and kind of let you know. But if you are talking to a recruiter, let them know what your number is, and like go over a little bit, because they're always going to try and negotiate. And always ask the recruiter, what's the salary range for this position, so that you can kind of go in prepared. If they don't really want to tell you, I personally would see that as a little bit of a concern, just because, like I said earlier, we work to make money to pay for living and experience different things. And if they don't want to kind of come forward with that, that's a little bit problematic. So ask them, don't be afraid to ask. If they don't want to say it, you can realize early on that maybe this is not the right company for you, because essentially you have to interview them, you have to work there. And something that I'm noticing is that hiring managers, they're very reluctant to even interview candidates who have been jumpy, where they kind of are just at one place for a year, 2 or 3. And they're very reluctant, and it may be for very good reasons that there were some short tenures. It can be layoffs, it can be the pandemic, it can be financial reasons that the company shut down. And unless you're specifically in that industry, some people just may not even be aware that Bath & Beyond is currently going through a liquidation process, and that's what caused the layoffs. So when you're interviewing, you also need to interview the company to make sure that you actually want to stay there long term. Because if you have short stints throughout your career, hiring managers are going to be very reluctant to even have a conversation with you unless you list on your resume, this was a layoff, this was the pandemic related, this was a closure or something like that. If you have shorter stints, definitely include that, and that will help you. Otherwise, they'll jump to conclusions and they're typically not favorable.
I wanted to bring up one more thing. I was going to touch on relocation. Even though you're coming out of college, you're still worthy and valuable. So if you're wanting to look at let's say a large city, Atlanta, or you're wanting to do something in New York, we always have opportunities to do relocation packages for you. So put that in your cap too, pin that, because that's an option too to help you get started, because we're wanting fresh young people with ideas to come on board. So try to get those internships in, and that's key for you. Okay.
I think that's so helpful. So I think one of the things that has been kind of playing over this Lyceum is the need to be transparent and to seek information, and that it feels taboo talking about money, but your skills, your experience, what you bring to an organization does have a dollar figure associated with it. So I think we need to maybe try to resist the urge to veer into politeness. We actually do have to talk about money and compensation in direct and clear terms. When we are playing the game, as you referenced, Kevin, and I think that's a helpful metaphor. I think it's also helpful to know that everybody wants to make this work. They are looking for an employee just as much as you are looking for an employer, right? And so we want to find a mutually agreed upon solution, but there is a little bit of art, of dance to these negotiations. Are there any tips that you would suggest for folks in terms of those discussions or things to avoid? And sometimes it's not what we do, it's what we don't do that helps us. So are there any tips that you would recommend in terms of actions, things to do in these situations, or things that would be important to avoid in these situations?
One of the things that sticks with me is we focus so much on salary, and we've already talked about there are so many other factors of that job that are important. You may be asking for a certain amount, and then when you realize how much the benefits are, you're going to have sticker shock. Because that can vary per company. Is it a large company? Are they even offering benefits? Are you going to have to go out to the market and get your benefits? So you definitely want to, if you're, they're offering you the job, you want to ask to see what those rates look like, because it can pretty much kill whatever salary you're asking for.
I'm happy to go next. I was going to throw in there also like key things. After you do complete the interview, always follow up with a note of some sort of thank you for your time, whatever you want to add to it about the job, something that piqued your interest, you're excited about. Show them that you're interested. And that keeps your name in front of the recruiter, the hiring manager, if it goes that far to them. I always forward everything to my hiring managers, just so they know they're in the loop. But that's something a key step that I think is important to stand out.
Yeah, I agree. Just to build off the, negotiation as a game metaphor. So what I like to do when I'm in a salary negotiation conversation, I personally don't like to be the first one to say a number. There are other perspectives on that, I think, but I, even if I'm asked directly by the recruiter, I'm a little cagey, if you will. I'm a little hesitant to say a number, because I think once the candidate says a number, they're kind of locked into somewhere very close to that number. So I will try to get the recruiter to give me a range first, and then I know where I can play within that range. And so for a new graduate, because you don't have, hard work experience yet, you may be at the lower end of that range, but at least you know that there's room to grow. And so, and then once you have some experience, you have more bargaining power in your negotiation. And so once I have the recruiter, tell me the first number, then I will always negotiate. Even if the recruiter offers me something that I think is fair for my market value, I will always negotiate for higher, because why not? Like, why would you not want to make some more money for doing that job? And so I think one that's important to know is just always negotiate for more. When you say your number, keeping in mind that you may land somewhere in the middle, so shoot a little higher. And then if in that negotiation they can't come up to the number you said previously, that actually opens up a door to bring in some of those other things to negotiate. So to use my previous example, if they offered you 40 and you wanted 45, you say, okay, how about 50? They land at 45 right in the middle. And you say, okay, what about a sign-on bonus to get me to that $50,000 number, at least for the first year? And you ask the question and see what happens. You never know what's available until you ask. Let's say that this company doesn't offer sign-on bonuses. You can say, okay, well, can you give me an extra week of vacation? Or can you do X, Y, or Z? But by negotiating salary first, always having some room in between the offer and where you state you want to be, it gives you more power to negotiate for other things beyond salary. So that's my biggest tip in these conversations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's great, Kevin. Vivian, did you want to take us home, and then we'll do some questions from our attendees?
Sounds good. So going off of what Kevin said, always start out higher even when talking to the recruiter, because I've had a few cases where candidates would say they were looking for X number, then they went through the interview process and all of a sudden they're asking for more. And then hiring managers all of a sudden are like, well, wait a minute, that's weird. This person said they wanted X and now they're asking for Y. What's going on here? It starts to look shady, even though it's not really shady at all. It's easier to start high and negotiate down than to start low and then try to negotiate up. It's typically an uphill battle that rarely ends in a success. So it's better to start higher and, like Kevin said, kind of get creative with different perks. If it's a job that is fully remote, you can ask if they offer some kind of like internet bill reimbursement or your phone bill reimbursement, little things like that that kind of give you a little bit more wiggle room with your money. Same thing with student loan assistance, continued education. Can they send you to different courses? Can they send you to grad school, cover part of the cost while they still keep you on payroll? Little things like that. Research different ways that you can negotiate your compensation package. Look at it in terms of compensation package, but in terms of salary, always start high, because that is what you're going to be paid on every year. And this is what you then negotiate up as inflation happens, as just the annual raises happen and things like that. That's your baseline that you're operating from. And like Kevin said, a sign-on bonus, that's a one-time thing. And when you're accepting 45 and you want to really be at 50,000 and you're kind of sacrificing the 50,000 for the sake of being at 45 and getting that $5,000 sign-on bonus, you may not get that next year. And if you get a 2% raise, which is very standard, it's going to take you a couple of years until you get to 50. So be very mindful of that and really do start higher. You can always negotiate down. It's rarely a success when you try to negotiate up, and typically that ends up seeming like a red flag or something of concern, where then you're kind of giving the hiring manager a reason to back out of it. And you want to make this process as easy and attractive as possible. And don't be afraid to ask for more, just because, like Dr. Lund mentioned earlier, this is a little bit part of the interview process where you're demonstrating how you're dealing with difficult topics, because salary negotiations are a little bit more confrontational, they're a little bit more on edge, they're a little bit more anxiety inducing. And when you're working as part of a team, conflict happens sometimes, and how you deal with it is so crucial. And this is where the salary negotiation skills really come in and kind of show how you deal with these more difficult, challenging things.
Yeah, thank you so much for that response. I think one thing that you underscored there that's important and feeds into a question from the audience is the importance of base salary, right? So that first base salary that you get, raises are based off of that base salary. So, 3% on 45,000 versus, 50,000, we're starting to see kind of a separation over time in earnings that we're leaving on the table. And so kind of that first salary is so important. But one of the questions in the chat, and I know that we are concluding at 1 p.m. Students, if you want to receive Lyceum credit, you'll need to stay on for the remainder of the Lyceum. We understand for some of our alums and folks who are in the world of work that they might need to drop off. That's totally understandable. But I do want to get to some of these questions quickly so that you all can hear the great words of this panel. So one of the questions was, what's the best way to negotiate a higher wage after a year with the company? So we've talked about the importance of that kind of first negotiation, that base salary, but let's say you've been working for a year, you want to revisit compensation. What's the best approach?
I'll take that. The way I've been at a couple of different large global companies, you have a year-end review and you have to do a performance review. At that time, you can negotiate that topic. And then I was also going to say, in the beginning, you can also negotiate if you don't get that 45 that you wanted and you get the 42.5. You could ask, could I be reviewed in 90 days or 90 days and then maybe 6 months? And see my performance and go from there.
I think that's a great point, Paul, is sometimes folks, they kind of get all they can get in a negotiation, or there's really nothing in the budget for a position, but you can request, okay, well, can we revisit my compensation or revisit my performance in 90 days, 6 months? And then those kind of key moments, annual reviews or completion of a big project, that's often a time where folks can kind of revisit compensation. I have a question. This is great for the folks we have on the call. What's the best way to ask for a range from the recruiter?
So, Vivian, you're more qualified to answer.
Honestly, just ask. We're just humans. We understand that people have cost of living that they need to cover. Just go ahead and ask, hey, this sounds like a really interesting role. It seems like it matches my skill set. What's the salary range that you guys have for this? And just ask. If they're really hesitant to give you an answer, I doubt it that they don't know. They always have to know what the salary range is, or say, well, just get back to me once you have a salary range and then we can continue the discussion, because ultimately recruiters, they're very busy, so they don't like wasting time, and neither do you. So don't be afraid to get straight to the point and say, hey, this sounds really great. What's the salary range that you have for this position?
Yeah, I think that's great advice. The importance of being direct and transparent. The last question, and we could probably talk about this question for hours, so I hate to put it at the end, but I think this is so important in kind of light of how we started this conversation and kind of what continues to exist in the world with wage inequity, especially for women and women of color. What are some challenges that folks have faced in negotiations, especially if they come from a minoritized or marginalized group? So making the case for one's value and worth, dealing with kind of the intersectional layers of, being a member of a marginalized group. What are some, barriers that you might have experienced, or ways in which you can overcome those barriers?
I will say, just in your communication, in your interview, I always ask questions like, what are you looking for in this hire? There are probably gaps, and where can you fill in those gaps? You know, you want to just, again, be confident in what you're saying and let them know that you're bringing yourself to this company. And quite honestly, if it's a company that is kind of pushing back on that as far as your salary, you got to really evaluate, is that where you want to be? Because are there going to be other things? Salary is just kind of that first thing. What's going to happen? What is the culture when you get there? Are you still going to have barriers throughout your employment? So hopefully, you get through that in that first setting and get that salary. I've worked in environments where there were mostly men. At the time I was in my early 20s, and they're mostly older gentlemen. And that's hard trying to do that, but you've got to, okay, even if you're looking at data, what are generational kind of cues, just so you know what to say. Well, this is who I am. I can organize, I can develop, there may be skills that group may be missing. So you really always want to talk about that job and what you can do for that job. Keep it strictly, work, and what you can do for them. And I think you can get through barriers with most employers.
Thanks for sharing that perspective, Tanisha. So that wraps up our panel. I want to thank all of our amazing panelists for taking time out of their busy days to share with us all their wisdom, their tips, their strategies, so that our job seekers or current workers are able to successfully negotiate their next salary offer. We truly appreciate everybody's time, and I appreciate Sarah and Kia for helping make this possible. Sarah, I know that you might have some departing words for us.
Yeah, this was a great panel. Thank you so much to all of our panelists and to you, Dr. Lund, for moderating. I think this is great information for our students and our alums. And I just wanted to let folks know that they can continue to follow us and stay connected on social media at Wingate Alumni on Instagram and Facebook, because we'll be doing more of these events and panels. And so I want people to know that when we announce them. Also, homecoming, save the date, October 13th and 14th. And also we'll be sending out a survey after the panel so that we can find out what people would like to see more of as we develop more programs and events for alums. So please, I hope you take the time to fill out the survey so we can continue to develop these events. So thank you all so much. I think that's it. If you're a student, I believe you need to stay on, but everybody else can conclude. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all. And I really enjoyed this presentation. I think it helps me as well as a young professional getting my foot into the door. So I hope that all of our students and alum have taken a token from your presentation. Again, thank you all so much. Students, I've sent the form link in the chat. If you have any questions with connectivity, please let me know. I'll stay on till about 1:10 and then I'll get off. But other than that, thank you all for your time and thank you for this presentation.